أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نون والقلم وما يسطرون. ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم. فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون. إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين. فلا تطع المكذبين ودوا لو تدهن فيدهنون ولا تطع كل حلاف مهين هماز مشاء بنميم مناع للخير معتد أثيم عتل بعد ذلك زنيم أن كان ذا مال وبنين إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين. سنسمه على الخرطوم. إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين ولا يستثنون. فطاف عليها طائف من ربك وهم نائمون فأصبحت كالصريم. فتنادوا مصبحين أن اغدوا على حرثكم إن كنتم صارمين. فانطلقوا وهم يتخافتون ألا يدخلنها اليوم عليكم مسكين. وغدوا على حرد قادرين. فلما رأوها قالوا إنا لضالون بل نحن محرومون. قال أوسطوهم ألم أقل لكم لولا تسبحون. قالوا سبحان ربنا إنا كنا ظالمين. فأقبل بعضهم على بعض يتلاومون قالوا يا ويلنا إنا كنا طاغين. عسى ربنا أن يبدلنا خيرا منها إنا إلى ربنا راغبون. كذلك العذاب ولعذاب الآخرة أكبر لو كانوا يعلمون. إن للمتقين عند ربهم جنات النعيم. أفنجعل المسلمين كالمجرمين ما لكم كيف تحكمون. أم لكم كتاب فيه تدرسون إن لكم فيه لما تخيرون. أم لكم أيمان علينا بالغة إلى يوم القيامة إن لكم لما تحكمون. سلهم أيهم بذلك زعيم. أم لهم شركاء فليأتوا بشركائهم بشركائهم إن كانوا صادقين يوم يكشف عن ساق ويدعون إلى السجود فلا يستطيعون خاشعة أبصارهم ترهقهم ذلة وقد كانوا يدعون إلى السجود وهم سالمون فذرني ومن يكذب بهذا الحديث سنستدرجهم من حيث لا يعلمون وأملي لهم إن كيدي متين أم تسألهم أجرا فهم من مغرم مثقلون أم عندهم الغيب فهم يكتبون فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تكن كصاحب الحوت إذ نادى وهو مكظوم لولا أن تداركه نعمة من ربه لنبذ بالعراء وهو مذموم فاجتباه ربه فجعله من الصالحين وإن يكاد الذين كفروا ليزلقون بأبصارهم لما سمعوا الذكر ويقولون إنه لمجنون وما هو إلا ذكر للعالمين صدق الله العلي العظيم.
محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توسعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك، وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك، وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي، وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته، وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته، وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي، وقعدت بي أغلالي، وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي، وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها، ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي، ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي، وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك. ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين. يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تولمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما. لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين. وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدعا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم نجرمته وكل ذنب نذنبته وكل قبيح نسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة نظرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي أورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وأعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا رب نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا رب مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غناه، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من أهله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. فاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين وقاتل المشركين عليا حجة الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله صلى الله على محمد وآله وسلم صلوات
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sayyid Hasan, Rizvi, respected elders, brothers, sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen and Kul Arwahil Mu'minin wal Mu'minat, Sawab al-Fatiha. Ayat ma yajibun is requested for all the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Now let us invite Sayyid to come forward to recite tonight's majlis. Wa Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة بعد الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've been talking about how to build a community that's built and ready for establishing the concept of wilaya, a community that's ready for its imam's return. We've talked about some of the issues that act as obstacles to this community building. The first was issues in theology, how sometimes theological issues or philosophical issues cause us to doubt certain things about the religion, cause us confusions, and we may end up falling prey to false, fake, and unrealistic arguments. And we get pushed away from what is the true faith and the true teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Last week we talked about the common doubts that both Muslims and non-Muslims fall prey to. And we saw that there were basically three common elements in terms of where are the concentrated areas where Muslims and non-Muslims have issues with Islam, where they have their doubts and confusions. And we said that it revolves around, number one, Tawheed, issues about God and justice and good and evil. Secondly, about Nubuwah, about the Prophet, his mission. Is it something which is historical or ahistorical? Does his mission matter right now or not? Was it something just meant for Arabs? Is it meant for all time? And imama as well. Meaning, is there a continuation up until this time? Is there some sort of method and system of leadership of wilayah in this day and age right now? Or are we left to do whatever we feel like doing? And we said that in this time of the ghaibah, this seems to be exactly the advice that the sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, had given to Zurara. When he had this long conversation with Zurara about when is the ghaibah, what are the qualities, why will it happen, all these things. In one part he says, what if I make it there to the ghaibah, then what do I do? What's the best thing for me to do? How should I act? And this is where the Imam said to Zurara, if you make it there, if you make it to the ghaibah, then make sure you recite this dua, which begins, as we all know, Allahumma arifni nafsak, and then it continues on. So we said that this dua revolves around these sort of three ideas of first tawheed, making us understand having the ma'rifah of Allah in his true sense, then having the ma'rifah of the Nabi or nubuwah, and then having the ma'rifah of the Hijjah, or in a sense imamat or wilayat. So those three common elements that non-Muslims and Muslims are in doubt about, are confused about, seem to be the exact same thing that Zurara is being told by the sixth Imam, that in the ghaibah, you need to make dua that you have ma'rifah of these three things. So it seems like we've established a fairly strong connection, that the Imam knew exactly what would be the main traits, the main things that you and I would be confused about in this era. And we thought about it, that even us as Shias who have been listening to lectures for all of our lives, maybe attend some classes and seminars and things like that, we still have our own doubts about these ideas, right? A lot of people still come to me and ask me if they can, is there any proof that God exists? They ask for proof on how do we know that, or why does God allow evil to happen in the world? They ask, why does Allah do this? Why are the rules of Islam like this? So people have all of these doubts right now. Shias. Even though we have books and books and books written up with answers. Lectures have been given about this, but still people are confused. So they're not sure about these things. So what we decided we were going to do then, inshallah, for a few nights, is go through a commentary of this dua. This Allahumma arifni nafsak. And this dua is famously known as the dua zamanul ghaiba. The dua of the time or the period of the ghaiba. Zamanul ghaiba. That's the famous name that it's given. So what we're going to do is, at least for tonight, is just give a little bit of background information. Before we jump right into the actual tafsir and the sharh and the commentary, we want to give some background information first, so we have a general idea about this dua. Because many of you may have heard it, may have recited it, you may recite it in your own qunuts right now, or maybe on Fridays you recite it, whatever it is. We don't know maybe where the background is. We don't know where it comes from, and we're going to go through some of that and talk about how there are actually some variations of this dua, and then finally go through this dua from the words of the ulama themselves and see what they have to say about this specific dua. And then in our following sessions, we're going to get started with the actual commentary itself. Please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then, of course, after we're done with this, as usual, we'll have a quiz at the end. So whoever will be joining the quiz, you can join now to save us some time at the end. Okay. We know that right now, as we've been mentioning, everybody who's on a WhatsApp group or has YouTube or gets forwarded something knows that right now, everybody's main sort of idea that comes to their mind when they think about du'as and ziyarat and a'mal, the main concept now, not years ago, but right now, it's about authenticity. Is this dua really authentic or not? Before nobody really cared. They never even thought about the word authentic. We just recited whatever was given to us. If it came on, the screen, if it was in Mafatih, that was it. We just did it. No questions asked. Now, because of certain personalities, everything is kind of, being thrown under the bus. Everything is questionable. Everything is deemed inauthentic until proven otherwise. So, okay, fine. Just for that sake, let's actually go through the authenticity of this, right? Because somebody may respond. Again, I know some individuals in the community here who, let's say, may already have that or are attracted to that trend of looking at everything from this lens of authenticity. Sure, no problem. Because we don't want to, be replied to at the end of the day, say, look, you're going to go through this whole commentary and you're going to give us all these wonderful deep points from the ulama, but if it's not authentic, who cares? So, okay, fine. That's fair enough. Let's actually go through the authenticity. So as we had mentioned, this dua in the first chain that we're going to look at is linked to, as we said, the sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farjahum. And altogether, this isn't just, usually what we hear for ziyarat and these a'mad and these kind of like du'as that communities are used to, we end up hearing that, oh, this is, khabar wahid. It's only one person or it's only one chain or something like that. To the sixth Imam, there happens to be 6 unique chains, meaning 6 different sort of links that go back to the sixth Imam himself. And these have been reported by various different scholars. So, 2 of these chains come in Kitab al-Kafi of Shaykh al-Kulaini, rahmatullah alayh. So he reports himself 2 different chains which go back to the sixth Imam. Another chain comes from one of the students of Shaykh al-Kulaini, which we famously know as Muhammad al-Nu'mani. So he has this famous book called Ghaybat al-Nu'mani, or Kitab al-Ghayba, right? The Kitab al-Ghayba al-Nu'mani. So many people reference this book in terms of issues related to the end of times and the 12th Imam, right? So in this Kitab al-Ghayba, he has his own chain of narration, different than his teacher, Shaykh al-Kulaini. So it's a separate one. So now we have 3 total. In addition to that, we have Shaykh Saduq, rahmatullah alayh, who in his book, Kamaluddin, he also brings 3 unique chains of narrations as well. So now, altogether, we have 6 unique chains, meaning 6 separate sort of lines that are going back and recite and saying that we heard this from the sixth Imam, right? 6 different groups of individuals. So if we were to stop right then, this would be pretty good, right? And again, I'm not going to go into the details, but most of our ulama of hadith, rijal studies say, look, the people in the chain, they're good, or, given the majority opinion, there's no issues here, so this is a reliable narration. This is a reliable tradition, and you can recite it without any issue. Now, what we see is that in some of these narrations, there's different versions of this dua. There's one that's a much longer version, right? Normally we have that shorter version, right? Allahumma arifni nafsak, and all the way to Dalaltu an dini. That's that short version that you and I are probably used to. There's actually a very, very, very long, very long, I guess is, subjective, but long for me, I guess, right? I probably get tired halfway through, I don't know. So it's a longer one. So that one is actually linked to a whole different chain in a different book altogether. So there's actually 2 ulama who mention this separate one. So instead of being linked directly to the sixth Imam, the chain actually goes to the first na'ib of the 12th Imam, Imam al-Hujjah, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad ajjal farajahum. So they say that many of the companions of the first na'ib of the 12th Imam, who was Uthman ibn Sa'id al-As'adi, he said, and he'd given that command to the Shias of that time, that, in my connection with Sahib al-Amr, with our Imam, he has commanded us in order to protect us, in order for us to strengthen our connection to him, to recite this dua. And he gave this longer version, right? So this version, this longer version, which has the same beginning, but it has all this extra stuff afterwards, this has been mentioned by 2 separate scholars, by Shaykh al-Tusi and Sayyid ibn Tawus, rahmatullah alayhima. Shaykh al-Tusi mentioned this in Misbah al-Mutahajjid, and Sayyid ibn Tawus mentioned this in Jamal al-Usbu', right? Now again, all these names of these books and these scholars, maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. Again, I'm not saying that any of you need to memorize this, unless you want to, pass the quiz, then maybe you should memorize it, right? Then definitely you're going to need to remember this. But otherwise, it doesn't really matter. If you're not in it, then, who cares, right? This is for people who need to memorize this stuff. I don't know this stuff. I have my notes here, and I'll probably forget as soon as I close my laptop. But, you forget these things. It's not a big deal. These are little details. Sometimes knowing the name of our ulama, it's not a bad thing. And maybe to get familiar with our original books, our Kutub al-Arba, maybe is not a bad idea. Maybe having a class on a general understanding of how hadith studies works, maybe wouldn't be a bad idea too. Especially since we have, again, a lot of speakers and scholars and now a lot of lay people throwing around these words, inauthentic or authentic, or the classical scholars did this or they didn't do this. Like, okay, slow down. You're you're talking to people who can barely pronounce the names of these scholars, and you want to start throwing around all these fancy book titles and, in 3rd century Hijri this, like, look, just slow down, right? And speak to people at their own pace. If people, like we said, if you're interested in getting involved in the conversation and research, okay, maybe inshallah later on, you might be able to offer a class about an intro to hadith studies, and maybe it might be beneficial to some of us, right? For most of us, it's probably not going to matter. But, I guess nowadays, it may be beneficial. So, now we said 6 chains of narrations to the 6th Imam with the shorter version. We have linked to the first Na'ib, Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Asadi, who's, again, getting it from the 12th Imam. We have Shaykh al-Tusi and Sayyid ibn Tawus. So they have 2 separate chains. So now, basically, altogether, we've got 8. In addition, they say that when we have these 6 unique chains with the shorter version, there's actually 2 different versions of the shorter version, right? Again, I'm not going to go through all of them. But basically, the one that you and I are used to narrating and reciting, that is the most famous one. The ulama say, let's stick to that one. That seems like the one that is most in line with the way the Imam spoke. It's the most beautiful one, the most fasih and baligh, and it just sounds like it makes the most sense. It's the most in line with what we probably assume the Imams would say. So they say, look, maybe even the longer one might be authentic too, that's fine. But we're just going to focus on that short version. And even the ulama who have written commentaries on the dua, they typically only write commentaries on this shorter version. Although a few of them actually have done the longer one, but most will focus on that shorter version. So this is basically the authentic part of it. We got chains. It's not just one single chain. It's not coming from a book that's written 5 years ago. This is coming from classical scholars like Sayyid ibn Tawus and Shaykh al-Tusi. It's coming from Shaykh al-Saduq, Ghaybat al-Nu'mani, Shaykh al-Kulaini. So these are original scholars who are very, very close to the time of the 12th Imam. Right? So nobody should be able to come and say, oh, this is something that recently scholars have made up. No. We have good evidence that this is being linked to the 12th Imam at the very least, and we can even trace it back to the 6th Imam as well. So this is very, very strong, and that's why most of our ulama say this is something that could be recited. Now, are there ulama who, now don't just say that it can be recited, it's jaiz, but are there some ulama who say no, it should be and it must be recited for our spiritual growth? Now what we want to do is, let's take the authenticity part, let's put it aside, and now let's focus on another way of authenticating things. You see, some people, for them it's just about, again, a very robotic system of looking at it. Like, give me the chain and let me look at the people in the chain. Look, that's one way of doing it. But if we have the seerah of our ulama, of our awliya, of our urafa, those who have devoted their lives to Islam, and they've been reciting this over and over and over again, and they're certifying this themselves, and they're saying that this is something that's reliable, even if, as they say in their own words, even if they say, you know what, in terms of the chain, maybe it's inauthentic, but some of us, we have direct connections with the Imam at the time. Some of us, we've seen the Imam in our dreams, we've seen various other ulama in our dreams, and they've said, not just this dua, but other duas, they have a lot of power and they should be recited. Isn't that another way of authenticating things? Don't we usually in any other place, even if let's say evidence about something is not so super strong, if we see empirical evidence as we'd call it, let's just say, I have to be careful of the example I'm giving here with all the doctors that are probably here, but let's just say that there's a, for the common cold, right? I don't want to say corona because then I might get in trouble, right? Let's just say for the common cold, people say, you know what? We do, turmeric, haldi, and we do ginger, and, we mix it with XYZ, and usually with honey and black pepper, and when we do that, and we mix it with water or milk, and warm milk, that takes care of our cold very quickly. Now, there may be absolutely no scientific evidence behind that, so no doctor will ever tell you to do that, but if you ask pretty much any brown auntie, especially anybody that's grown up in the East, they'll tell you that if you do this, you will be cured almost instantly, or at least in a couple hours, if not overnight. And these sort of things, this sort of traditional medicine has been passed down from generation to generation, and it's lasted. Why has it lasted? Because it's worked. So maybe Western medicine doesn't care about all that stuff. Well, that's fine, but we have generation upon generation upon generation. All of our ancestors have been using this traditional Sunnati medicine, and with that, alhamdulillah, it seems like we have been doing okay. Our immune system seems to be fairly strong. And now finally we see that Western medicine is catching up. Oh, the benefits of turmeric and the benefits of intermittent fasting and the benefits of ginger and all this stuff. Like, yeah, our nanis and dadis were crushing this stuff up for us, every other day. We knew this. Now your pharmaceutical companies are allowing you to, experiment with this stuff. That's great. You can catch up to us, inshallah, whenever you get the chance. So we don't always have to stick to science, and look at the evidence. Sometimes they're not going to look at it. And even when they do, they may not have that experience that you and I have had for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So let's look at that sort of evidence that we have in terms of the words of the ulama about this dua of Zamanul Ghaiba. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now again, I'm not saying to use this stuff if you get corona or whatever. I'm not saying take haldi and all these kind of things as well, right? But I'm just saying, you know what works, right? Okay. First, let's look at Ayatollah Bahjat, Qaddasallahu sirr. Somebody that most people know had this strong connection with the Imam of the time. So many of his students and those who knew him very well say that every day he would devote at least 2 hours of his day specifically to the Imam of the time. Other ibadat was one thing. Other a'mal was one thing. But 2 hours out of his day, he would specifically devote to things related to connecting and building a relationship with Imam Zaman. So he said 1 hour he would do during the day and 1 hour at night. Every single day he would do this. So his students say that, he did this and he found benefit. Maybe it's something that you and I should do that as well. About this specific dua, Allahumma arifni nafsak. He said that zahiran, apparently there seems to be a deep secret within there. Now, what is that secret? We'll inshallah talk about it when we start the commentary. But he himself is saying, look, I am dedicating every single day, at least 2 hours, an hour during the daylight and an hour at night to the Imam. And he's saying that there's a secret here as well. Another famous scholar, Ayatollah Sayyid Ahmad Karbala'i, he also gave this advice about maintaining and connecting with the Imam of the time. And he actually said, we have to be very, very careful because many of us lose that constant connection. Some of us maybe on certain nights, right, maybe on Friday or maybe 15th Sha'ban or a few nights, maybe we connect with the 12th Imam. But he's saying we have to be very careful and make sure that this connection is constant. It has to be all the time. And he said one of the ways to do that, what he would advise to his students, is that this dua, Allahumma arifni nafsak, should be recited after every single salah. Every namaz you should recite this dua. In addition, he said in order to maintain that relationship with the 12th Imam, he said recite Surah Al-Ikhlas 3 times after every salah and gift that recitation of that, 3 times recitation of Surah Tawheed, gift that to the Imam of the time. Now many of us might think, okay, I can do that. What does the Imam of the time need that for? What's the point of that? That's a separate discussion about what is the actual benefit to gifting these things. Now we can understand for our own marhumin and marhumat, right? Giving sadaqah or reciting something and giving it in their name or on their behalf, okay, it goes to barzakh and it turns into a gift from them. I don't know, right? Maybe they're chilling in barzakh and it turns into, I don't know, some jewels, or it turns into a mango lassi, I don't know, whatever it turns into in barzakh. But they get something out of it, right? That's what the ulama say at least. It turns into something that's usable for them. Or if they're having difficulty there, like they're trying to traverse something, it could turn into a horse or doom buggy, I don't know, whatever they get over there. That's between Allah and them, I don't know. So it turns into something physical that's useful or metaphysical. But what does the Imam of the time need our du'as for? What does he need our gift of Surah Tawheed? What does he need that for? Something for you to think about. I'm not going to answer it tonight. Something for you to think about though. So far, Ayatollah Sayyid Ahmad Karbala'i is saying, recite this dua after every salah, gift 3 times recitation of Surah Tawheed to the Imam of the time. He also says, make sure, he doesn't say when, but he says, don't neglect this famous dua, Ilahi Adam al-Bala. He says, don't, keep that dua in mind as well. It doesn't seem like he specifically said do it all the time or recite it after every salah, but he said, just don't let this leave you. So that is that scholar. Let's go to, I think we'll do maybe 2 more ulama, if you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Next we'll go to Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, hafidhahullah, one of the greatest philosophers and urafa living in our time right now. he has a long sort of discussion and commentary on this dua, but I want to give just a few points that he's mentioned. One thing is that he says that this is the Amik Tareen. This is the most in-depth dars and lesson about Imamat Shinasi. If you want to recognize what Imamat really is, he says this is the best dars and the best school, the best lesson that you can find. This dua. It's in here, he says. And he expands a little bit. And I'll give some of the words. He says, look, this is not just some religious belief we're talking about here, right? Think about other du'as that we recite. Oh Allah, forgive my marhumin and my marhumat. Oh Allah, forgive me. Allah, I did all these sins, forgive me. Allah, I mess up in my life, please ignore this. Oh Allah, I need rizq. Allah, I'm sick, take care of me. This is the stuff usually we recite, right? Health and wealth and rizq and help my family and my parents and my community. This is the stuff we're doing. It's kind of this give and take. Allah, I need this, I want this. He said this dua, it's not just, you're not asking for health or wealth or protection or anything like that. He says you're asking for the deepest thing possible, which is ma'rifah. It's not just ma'rifah of anything. It's ma'rifah of tawheed, meaning the nafs of Allah. It's a deep idea. The ma'rifah of the Nabi, of the Rasul, and of the Hijjah. And at the end of it, we're saying if we don't understand any of this, then there's going to be dalala, complete misguidance in our deen. He said this is a complete system, a strengthened system of how you and I need to function in terms of our religious literacy. He said that's the point of this. He said many of us, we have a belief system, and that's good. But it doesn't mean that we are religiously literate. We are religiously educated. He said this dua is for a whole different level of Shia. You want to ask for health and wealth and forgiveness? That's great. You want to believe in the imams and the 12th imam? Wonderful. He said, but if you want to be literate in wilayat, you want to be literate and educated in imamat, then you need to recite this dua with ma'rifah as well. You need to understand exactly what the imam is trying to teach us here. And again, some of those lessons, inshallah, we'll be going through in the future. Finally, one more, alim. So everybody that we've mentioned so far, Ayatollah Bahjat, Ayatollah Sayyid Ahmad Karabalai, and Ayatollah Jawadi Amali. They're all relatively contemporary, right? Ayatollah Jawadi, obviously alive, and the other two are, of the sort of past modern era. But, they're in the past 100 years. So it's right now. Again, remember, some people might comment and say, look, even though the past ulama, like Sheikh al-Kulaini and Sheikh Tusi and the rest, okay, they mention it in their books, maybe. But did they ever actually recite it themselves? Did they recommend anybody to recite it? Don't just say it's in their book. Right? We can find things in people's books. But how do we know that they actually told us to recite it or not? Remember how we said that this dua came in the book of Sayyid ibn Tawus, again, one of our classical scholars, Jamal al-Usbu. In that book, Sayyid ibn Tawus actually gives commentary about this dua himself as well. So it's not just all the scholars of this time. It's classical scholars as well who are recommending us to recite this dua. So what does Sayyid ibn Tawus rahmatullah alayhi say? He says, do not perform ghafla. Do not be neglectful of this dua. Be very, very careful. And he says that we have recognized this dua min fadlillah. We have recognized that this dua is from the grace and blessings and mercy of Allah. This is a gift from God, he says, which he has particularly given to us. So we must trust it and rely on it. Now, why are his words extra sort of heavy? Many of our ulama who study the lives of scholars like this say, look, he wasn't just some regular scholar who was writing down du'as and ziyarat. They say he was a great and grand arif of his time. And he was known to have a connection, a strong connection with the imam of the time. An arif that's connected with the imam of the time. So they say that the only way he could be speaking like this, that we have recognized this dua as being something that Shias need to rely on. He's saying that we have recognized it. When he says that we, he means us, the urafa who are connected with the imam of the time. So in other words, it's as if he's saying that those who are the closest to the imam of the time, they have been given this dua. That's why we are telling you, the rest of you just sort of regular Shia, if you really want to increase your ma'rifah and get connected to the imam of the time, you need to make sure that this dua is in your arsenal. This has to be on your ammo belt. You have to be able to understand and recite this dua. And they say that this dua probably actually came to him from an irfani experience as well. As they say, kashf or mukashafa, something that may have been revealed to him in one of his dreams or spiritual visions. So that's why they're saying that. This is not just something that a scholar found in a book. We have those narrations, but in addition, we are finding ulama and urafa who are experiencing connections with the 12th Imam, who are hearing it possibly from the mouth of the Imam himself. So this alone should give us pause and make us really think that this dua has a lot of importance for us who are trying to get connected with the Imam of the time. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Even right now, of ulama who are alive, we have many who are commenting and writing commentaries, tafasir and shuruh on this dua. So when we go forward, inshallah, starting next week, when we start our commentary, we're going to be basing our commentary off of two of our living ulama. The first is Ayatollah Safi Gulpaygani, and the second is Sayyid Abdullah Fatiminiya. So Ayatollah Safi Gulpaygani, may Allah bless both of them and give them a long life. Ayatollah Safi Gulpaygani, many of you may have heard his name. He is a living marja. Many individuals, probably not in this community, most people in the West don't really know him, but in Iran and Iraq, many people do perform his taqlid. So he's written a book called Ma'rifat Hujjat Khuda. In that book, it's a complete commentary of the shortest, most famous version of this dua, Allahumma arifni nafsak. So we're going to be taking some points from him. And one of the other famous scholar that we're going to be quoting is Sayyid Abdullah Fatiminiya, and another famous Iranian scholar living right now, who's known for his works in irfan, in akhlaq, and very deep commentary in works that are beneficial for individuals right now. So we'll be using some lectures that he's given regarding a commentary on this specific dua. So starting, inshallah, in our next session, we'll be jumping right to the concept of tawheed. What is this idea of having ma'rifah of tawheed? What are we trying to do when we're saying, Allahumma arifni nafsak? Allah, we want ma'rifah of your nafs, of your true self. What does that really mean? Inshallah, we will be starting with that in our next session. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, inshallah, we'll move on to the quiz. Hopefully, most of you have logged in already so that we can get started right away. Okay, great. 19, nice. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Muhammad Abbas, Mujahid Jah Muhammad, Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, you can't steal my name. But I'm glad you spelled it right. Bande Khuda 2, Abu with 3 U's. Muzammil Jan Muhammad, Ali Musa, Mr. Classic, Juma Mubarak, Dua, Plato, me, Zahra Ali, the Jessas, Aoun, all these names that I don't know how to pronounce, so I'm going to leave them alone. Zahra H, Tahtul Hanak, specialists, Sakina, Abbas Suleiman, Fatima Ali. Who else? Let's see who just jumped in. Did I say Ali Abbas? Maybe I did. Lima Bean? Lima Bean. SS Haji. Okay, we're at 30. I think we can get started then, inshallah. Hur, Thor, RJ. Okay, there we go. Okay, Bismillah. In order to gain ma'rifah, a real understanding of the 12th Imam alayhi salam, we first need to have ma'rifah of what? Tawheed al-Nabuwah, Imama, Qiyamah and Ma'ad, or all of the above. Remember, we had the question last week and answers weren't very good. So let's see if you paid more attention this week. Hasan, 60% of you did pay attention. Okay. Remember, the Imam said, Arifni nafsak, tawheed. Arifni nabiyak and rasulak, so nubuwa. And then Arifni hujjatak. Right? That's how we get to the hujjah, is through tawheed and nabuwa. That's how we're going to get to everything else. So, not all the above. This dua, Allahumma arifni nafsak, is famously referred to as what? Dua ma'rifatul imam, dua imam al-zaman, dua zaman al-ghayba, or dua ahad. Oh boy, only 34% of you. Dua zamanul ghaiba. Said it a few times, I think. Okay. I think there's some of you who only pay attention when the quiz comes on. That's my guess. This dua's authenticity, reliability, and recommendation is something fairly new and recent among scholars. It has not been mentioned by scholars of the past. True, false, all of the above, or neither? I can't believe 3 of you said all of the above, and 6% of you said neither. Do you know that's a logical impossibility? It has to be either true or false. Yeah, 84% of you got it right. It's false, right? We said that, no, scholars of the past, like Sayyid ibn Tawus, have recommended this dua. So this is something known to be reliable from now, from the past up until now. I'm sure that 9% of you were just trolling. I hope that's the case. Burning which of these metals will produce a bright white flame? Lithium, lead, magnesium, or copper? Okay, 57% of you got it right. It is magnesium. Okay, let's see. Oh, a lot of you got 4 out of 4. Not bad. It was only Lima being in 5th place that got 3 out of 4, who made the board, but good job for you. Otherwise, Specialist, 1st place, 36 seconds. Quick, nice job. Plato, myself, in 3rd place apparently, and Abu with 3 U's. Yeah, is it 3? Yeah, 3 U's. Not far behind. Hasan, okay, that's good that at least some people are getting 4 out of 4 now, because it's been pretty bad the past few weeks, so that's a good thing. So inshallah, we have a very busy few days coming up, right? We have a Shahada program tomorrow night, followed by a CBE session regarding wills, inheritance, and estate planning, which is a very important topic. So definitely everybody should attend and pay attention. And if you're not going to be here in person, then at least attend online as well. And then there will be time after the lecture for Q&A as well. So please tune into that. On Sunday, what do we have? We have the Shahada of Muslim ibn Aqil, alayhi salam. Then on Monday, we have Yawm al-Arafah. So I think it's been mentioned in the weekly and on the WhatsApp broadcast. And then we have on Tuesday morning, Eid al-Adha. Is that it? Did I get everything up until Wednesday, Thursday, right? That's it. So inshallah, charge up your spiritual batteries because we're going to need it I'm going to need it this weekend definitely up until then. We'll see you all hopefully tomorrow night. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم سفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام ولي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى، السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها، ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات من ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن، بشراع ديني وخواتيم عمله، وقلبي لقلبكم سالم، وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، والحقق الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم جميعا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن، يا صاحب الأسر والزمان، سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.